There's a number in the Bible so large that when you first see it, you assume it must be a mistake, a copyist's error, a rounding that got lost somewhere in the centuries of transmission. It appears in the first book of Chronicles, chapter 22, and it belongs to a man who spent the last years of his life gathering material for a building he had already been told he would never construct. I'm going to give you that number by the end of this video, converted to dollars at the values of the day this video is posted. But before I do, I want to warn you. I recalculated this 3 separate times because I was sure I had misplaced a decimal. I had not. The number is what the number is, and the story behind it is stranger than the sum. Before we go any further, do me one favor. In the comments right now, before you know the answer, take a guess. What do you think the material David gathered for the temple would be worth today in US dollars? $1 billion? $10 billion? 100? Write your guess down there. At the end, come back and see how close you were. I promise you, unless you already know this passage, you will not be close. Now let me set the scene. David is old, his reign is ending. He has done everything a king of that world was expected to do. Unified the tribes, defeated the enemies on every border, brought the Ark of the Covenant into Jerusalem, and made that city the political and spiritual center of the nation. There is only one thing left: the house. The permanent house for the Ark, the temple, and David wants to build it. He has wanted to build it for years. He said so out loud to the prophet Nathan. I live in a house of cedar, but the Ark of God sits in a tent. He assumed, and Nathan initially assumed, that God would say yes. Instead, God said no. Not because David was unworthy in the ordinary sense, because in the words the text gives us, David was a man of war. He had shed too much blood. The house for the Ark of Peace would not be built by hands that had held that much steel. Read that carefully, because it matters for the rest of the story. God did not tell David to stop. God did not tell him to walk away and forget the project. God told him, you will not be the one to build it. Your son will. And in that gap, between being told the vision is real and being told it will not happen through you, David does something almost no one in his position does. He does not sulk. He does not scale back. He starts gathering material. Not a little. Not what a normal person, told he will not see the harvest, might grudgingly set aside. He gathers on a scale that has no precedent and, honestly, has never really had a successor either. And the numbers he leaves behind, written in the 22nd chapter of 1 Chronicles, are what we are about to unpack. Here is what the text says, and I am going to read this one carefully because everything hangs on it. With great pains I have provided for the house of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold and 1,000,000 talents of silver and bronze and iron beyond weighing. Bronze and iron beyond weighing. The writer just gives up on those. But the gold and the silver, he counts. And to understand what those counts mean, you have to understand what a talent was. A talent was not a coin. It was a unit of weight. In the Hebrew system, the one used throughout the Old Testament, the heavy talent weighed roughly 34 kilograms, about 75 pounds. Picture a full-checked airline bag. Not something you slide into your pocket, something you carry with 2 hands, and even then you feel it in your shoulders. 1 talent of gold was already a fortune. In ancient Near Eastern texts, kings measured their ransoms and their tributes in single-digit or low double-digit talents. When the Queen of Sheba came to Solomon later in this same book, she brought 120 talents of gold, and the writer treats that as a staggering, near-mythical gift. David gathered 100,000 of them. Let that number sit for a second. 100,000 talents of gold. Then, on top of that, 10 times more silver. 1,000,000 talents of silver. Then bronze and iron the writer refuses to even estimate. Now, we do the arithmetic. and I want you to follow it. Because the number at the end only means what it means if you saw how we got there. Start with the gold. 100,000 talents at 34 kilograms each. That is 3,400,000 kilograms of gold. 3,400 metric tons. Now convert that to troy ounces, because gold is priced in troy ounces on every commodity market in the world. 3,400,000,000 grams divided by 31.1 grams per ounce gives you a little over 109 million troy ounces. Multiply that by the price of gold per ounce on the day this video is posted, and you land somewhere in the neighborhood of $477 billion. That is the gold alone. Now do the silver. 1 million talents, again at 34 kilograms each, 34,000 metric tons of silver. Divide by 31.1 grams per troy ounce, and you get about 1,093,000,000 troy ounces. Multiply by the silver price per ounce on the day this video is posted, and you add another $73 billion, give or take. Add them together. 477 billion in gold, 73 billion in silver. The total, based on the values of the day this video is posted, is roughly $550 billion. In precious metals alone, not counting the bronze and iron beyond weighing, not counting the labor, the quarrying, the timber from Lebanon, the artisans, the transport, just the metal. $550 billion in raw material for one building. Stop and let that land. Because 550 billion is not a number the human brain actually processes. It is just a lot of zeros, so let me give you 3 ways to feel it. 3,400 tons of gold. That is more gold than most countries in the world hold today in their central bank reserves. Not the small ones, most of them. If you stacked David's gold in a single vault, it would be, by mass, a national treasury. Not a rich man's collection, a country's. Then the silver, 34,000 tons of it. Picture a freight train. A single boxcar holds about 100 tons of cargo. You would need more than 300 boxcars to move David's silver, a line of freight cars stretching for miles loaded to the roof. And then this, the piece that is almost impossible to hold in your head. If you gathered every dollar that has ever passed through your hands, every paycheck you have ever earned, every gift you have ever received, every unexpected sum that ever landed in your account, and you multiplied that across your entire life, you still would not reach the value of one single talent. And David gathered 100,000 of them, plus 1,000,000 more in silver. Now go back into the story, because there is something in it almost no one notices, and it is not the number. If this video has already given you something you did not know before, do me one small thing. Hit like. It costs you nothing, and it pushes the video toward people who also do not know this passage. And subscribe, because on this channel we do one biblical value per episode. Always with the math on screen, always in dollars, always honest about what we do and do not know. The next number is even harder to believe. I promise. Now here is the second way to look at this, and I think it is the more honest one. Metal is one way to measure wealth, but it hides the human cost of what wealth actually is, because in the ancient world, and honestly still today, money is really just stored labor. A denarius was a day of work. A talent, when counted by the standard of daily wages used in the parables, was 6,000 days of somebody's life. 6,000 days, 16 years of labor, without a single day off, for a single talent. So run the same calculation in days of work, not dollars. 100,000 talents of gold, plus 1,000,000 talents of silver, when you convert them into days of labor, come to somewhere on the order of tens of billions of working days. If a single human being had started working the morning the pyramids of Egypt were begun and had never stopped, no Sabbath, no holiday, no sleep, they would not be finished. They would not be close to finished. They would not, in fact, be able to finish inside the lifetime of the species. Which means this: what David gathered was not a fortune. A fortune is a number a rich person could conceivably accumulate in a lifetime. This was the compressed labor of civilizations, held in one man's hands, willingly, for a project that would outlive him. Take that image with you for a moment. The years of your own working life, and how small a slice of one talent they would even represent. And now, walk back into the assembly at the end of David's life, because that is the scene where something breaks open. One more piece of honesty before we get there, and I only do this once because I would rather tell you the truth than pretend I have not. The exact weight of the ancient talent varies slightly between traditions. Scholars debate whether the numbers in Chronicles are meant as literal counts or as a way of communicating overwhelming scale. The Hebrew idiom does not always draw the sharp line between the two that modern accounting does, and the price of gold and silver moves every hour. Every calculation in this video uses the metal prices of the day this video is posted, and the standard heavy Hebrew talent of 34 kilograms. That is the best approximation available, and even the most conservative reading of these numbers gives you something that dwarfs anything a modern person will ever encounter. Now, back to the scene. David is old. He calls the assembly together, the leaders of Israel, the priests, the officers, his son Solomon. He tells them what he has gathered. He tells them why. And then he says something that most readers skip past because they are still trying to process the numbers. He says, in effect, "This is not mine. It is what I have been able to prepare for the house I will not build. My son will build it. You will help him." And then, in the passage right after, he does something I want you to hold in your mind. He gives more, out of his own personal treasury, separate from what he had already gathered on behalf of the kingdom. He adds gold and silver he had set aside for himself, his private savings, his retirement, if you want to be crass about it. He hands that over too, for a building he already knew he would not see completed. There is something in that gesture that the number by itself cannot show you, because here is the strange truth of David's story. David spent the last portion of his life accumulating on a scale no one before or since has matched. And he did it knowing from the beginning, that he would not be the builder. Someone else would put the stones in place. Someone else would stand in the finished courts. Someone else would hear the choirs. He gathered the material for a house he would never see standing. And this is where I stop describing him and start asking you a question, because the number is not really the point. The number is what pulled you into the video. The point is what David did with the answer he was given. Most of us are wired the opposite way. We work for what we will use. We save for what we will spend. We build what we intend to live in. When we are told that a project we have poured ourselves into will finish under someone else's name, most of us pull back. We invest a little less. We hold something in reserve. We tell ourselves we will do our part, but not go all the way in. Because what would be the point of going all the way in on something we will not see? David did the opposite. He was told the vision was real, but not for him, and he doubled down. He gathered more, not less. He added his personal wealth on top of the national gathering. He organized the labor and the workers and the divisions of the temple staff for his son to inherit, ready to run. He wrote instructions. He handed over the plans. So here is the question the passage leaves in the air, and it is a hard one to answer honestly. What do you build when you know you will not see it finished? What do you invest in that will not have your name on it? What are you willing to gather for someone else to enjoy? Most of us have known a version of this. A parent works so their child can walk into a school they themselves never got to enter. A founder pours everything into a company that will thrive after they are gone. A teacher shapes students who will do things the teacher will never be present to witness. A believer plants a church, mentors, gives praise. For a harvest, they will not be around to gather. There is a name for this in Scripture. though the Bible does not use the modern word for it, it is one of the deepest forms of love. The Hebrew mind understood a person's life not as their own accomplishment, but as one link in a longer chain, a link whose job was to hold and then to hand off. David seems to have understood himself that way at the end, not as the builder, as the one who gathers so the builder can build. And here is where the Christian reader, if that is where you are coming from, cannot help but notice a pattern. Because centuries later, a descendant of David, literally from David's line, would come and speak of a house not made with hands, and he too would gather. He would gather people, teachings, a movement, and he would hand them off to men who would carry it after his death. Christ did not build the church in his earthly lifetime either. He gathered, he handed off, he trusted that what he had poured himself into would be built by others. So when we sit with David's number, $550 billion in metal, gathered by a man who was told he would not be the builder, the question the passage seems to be asking is not, how much can you accumulate? It is much quieter than that. For whom are you gathering? Because sooner or later, that is the only version of the question that matters. Everything you have, the money, the work, the years, is either being spent on you, or it is being gathered for something after you. Most lives split between the two. But the lives that stay in the memory of the people who come after tend to lean quietly toward the second. So here is what I want to leave you with. Not a lesson, just a question, and it is yours to answer. If you knew today that the thing you are working hardest for would be finished by someone else, someone who will not know your name, or who will know it but never see your face, would you still gather with the same intensity? Would you still add your private savings on top? Or would you pull back? Sit with that. There is no correct answer. There is only an honest one. And if this video moved you in any direction, even into disagreement, think of one person who would sit with this same question, well, not a group, one person, and send this to them. It was made to be passed along quietly from one thoughtful person to another. David gathered a fortune for a house he was never going to see. That is a hard thing to imagine. It is also maybe the most beautiful thing about him.